June 8th, 2021. The usual statement prior to approval of the agenda will not be read this evening. Over the past year, the governing body has met with one or more members participating remotely as authorized by the budget bill signed by the governor in 2020. That authorization only applies, though, if the governor has declared a state of emergency and the nature of the declared emergency makes it impractical or unsafe for the public body to meet, to assemble. And of course, reduction in the incidence of new COVID-19 infections, it is no longer impractical or unsafe for the governing body to assemble in a single location. Therefore, starting with tonight's meeting, the governing body will resume its normal practice of meeting at City Hall, either in the governing body chambers or, as tonight, in the school board chambers. Okay, we have approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to move approval? If there's no changes or corrections?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Moving on to the moment of silence, and Vice Mayor Banks, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Since we're going back to our traditional way of meeting, we will want to continue to have an orderly procedure for question and answer time. Previously, we were going from person to person to avoid confusion because part of the governing body was remote and part was in person, and that worked very well. So now, in order to avoid several of us speaking at the same time, please make a point to raise your hand or somehow indicate that you would like to speak, and that should help us to keep an orderly process going in our meeting, and I hope everyone's agreeable to that. Okay. Moving on to number 3, which is public comment time. There will be 4 opportunities this evening to speak publicly. There are 3 public hearings, and right now is the time for general public comment time. Is there anyone signed up to make public comment? No emails, phone calls, text, anything? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to the first public hearing. First public hearing is regarding the real estate tax rate for the coming fiscal year 2022, and the intention is to lower the rate from $155 to $153 per $100 valuation. I declare the public hearing open. Is there any staff comments on this particular item? Okay. Are there any governing body comments? Would any of the governing body like to make? Okay.
The tax rate, I think, is important.
Beg your pardon?
In the announcement?
Yes, that's the first public hearing. Do you have any questions or comments about?
I think the tax rate is incorrect.
Okay, so I would direct that to,
What does it say?
What's the question?
Correct.
What's the tax rate supposed to say?
145. You look at page 5 of 7 on the agenda.
Well, I think she's looking at the one that
She's looking at
the
it
assessor
as
sent
a-
like 2
This
months
says
ago.
145.
No, what that is if you were to get the same amount of revenue last year, because of the assessment value increase, you'd have to drop the tax rate to $1.45, right? And so they say because we're not doing that, we're quote unquote doing a tax increase. It's a state requirement to have that listed there, but it isn't a tax rate increase. It's an increase in taxable income.
Okay.
So they don't do the same thing for some reason with income taxes. They don't look at everyone's salaries and say, oh, everyone average salaries grew by 3%, therefore your income tax rate increased by that percent. They never do that with taxable income for income tax, but they have localities forced to do that for property taxes.
any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move on to public comment time. Would anyone of the public like to make comment on the first public hearing?
There's no sign
one microphone to pick up everyone, so speak loudly.
Okay. I'm Donald Shoemaker. I live at 8644 Burnside Court. This is the third time I'm speaking on this issue because I think it's very, very important that the increase in taxes is quite substantial. It's 5.6% increase for the whole city. In my neighborhood, it's over 11%. So you're hitting the most moderate income people with the largest tax increase this year. $1.53 does not lower it enough to offset the increase in assessments, not even close. I know that I spoke before and I gave you some options. I guess I'm a little dismayed because I know that the public hearing on June 8th is not going to change it. This budget's locked in. The rate's not going to change. There's going to be no spending decisions that are going to be differentiated from what the proposed budget is, which kind of saddens me a little bit. We're doing it legally, but I think that the public needs to be involved earlier in the process because once we get down to June 8th, major decisions have already been locked in since February and March. Basically, when you told Lazo what the rate should be, that locked it in. And there has been no change basically since then. But I'm concerned that we have a tax increase that is at least double what most people are getting as increases in wages. And it's going to start squeezing people out. I really would have liked to have seen us do a slightly more conservative approach to spending so that we could have lowered the tax rate more than just 2 cents. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Nope. Any emails or texts of any kind have come in? Okay. Do we have a motion to close the public?
So moved.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. The next public hearing is regarding the FY22 budget. All of these items will actually be voted on June 15th, 2021. I declare the public hearing open. Do you have to? Okay, thank you. Lazo is up.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. So tonight I'll be speaking during the budget public hearing and also the tax rate and fees public hearing, just to provide an update on any changes that have occurred over the last couple of months of budget deliberations to the public. So this was what was advertised. I apologize for this. Okay, so this is what we sent to the newspapers. Perspective, we end up doing a lot of double counting, right? So the general fund sends funding to the schools, right? That's double counted. The general fund operations send money to the capital fund, so that's another double counted. Same thing with the water and sewer, stormwater, when they send money to the general fund. So there's a lot of double counting within this, but again, it's just to show top line total dollars kind of being transacted across the city. And the next slide, I'm actually going to show you sorry about that. So the next slide, I'm going to show you what actually is the total budget. Okay, so this is the total city budget. I'm sorry, the top bar there is being cut off here. We upload that this season? Okay, that FY22 spreadsheet. Okay, so we uploaded the latest version of that. So this is just going to be in the budget overview tab. It breaks down every single revenue category and eliminates from the expenditure side all the double counting, so you can see that it's in reality the budget's $103 million, close to $104 million, growing from $101.5 million, so roughly a 2.2% increase, a total of $2.3 million increase from the FY 21 budget. This is now finalized again with the school's amount for the $1.2 million for the high school roof incorporated in here as well, along with the $12.7 million contribution to schools. That's part of the expenditure amount here now. And then same thing with all the different capital items have all been incorporated as well. That I'll go over in the next slide. But you can see again, total of about a $2.3 million total increase in spending. And you can see that's just not evenly divided. Again, this looks like a huge drop for city admin, but it's really because of CARES Act, right? We had a lot of CARES Act money in 21 that we don't in 22. However, again, in an FY 22 budget amendment, I would expect this number to go up with the additional federal money that we're going to be getting. But that's why it shows such a big decrease there. But everything else, kind of a steady increase. The majority of the increase, of course, being resulting from the 3% salary increases to our employees to help deal with our retention issues that we've been having, and also the 5% increase specifically for ESS that's state budgeted. So this is just kind of a summary by bullet point for this change since, with the ongoing deliberations that we had. If you remember, we had a large surplus to start off the budget with, to kind of give you all options on what to do with those funds, including how to support the schools as well. So the biggest change was that $1.2 million transfer to schools for the high school roof, $30,000 for the fire station roof. We all had the motion to move forward with the 5% salary increase for DSS and not the 3%, because it was actually cheaper for the city to do that. They were going to match, or they were going to cover 85% of a 5% increase versus 0% of a 3% increase. So it was worthwhile. So it ended up having, it was not only not a cost to the city, it actually ended up saving us some budget money by going to 5% salary increase for DSS. And then we added no commercial overnight parking signs, $250,000 capital line item, the parking enforcement vehicle and technology. And then at the last meeting before advertisement, we made the decision to add the $25,000 to keep on hand for any necessary property demolition, like we did for the Mosby house, and then the additional $25,000 for part-time code enforcement support to really help ramp up that program in the next fiscal year. Probably wondering how that caused an increase in spending in FY 22, but then a long-term savings throughout the next few fiscal years. About $50,000 savings in FY 23 and 24. And then this fixed the temporarily future debt discrepancy, and I can pull that up for clarity purposes on the spreadsheet. I just have to use a thumb drive. That's one of the items I forgot to bring up. But remember, the schools made the comment that in the future, for some reason, in future years, the debt has gone up for them after the refinancing. We're still looking into why that happened, but in reality, from what we're gathering so far, it looks like the previous years for schools should have been higher than what was actually reported. But we're not touching, history is history, but for the future years, just for right now, for temporary, I just equalized it to what it was in FY 20 budget model, so they can't say that we're increasing their debt. We're equalizing it to before, but I'm gonna keep investigating. But apparently, there's been a lot of refundings that have occurred, and they should have been split 50. Going to the schools, so the school's amount that was reflected wasn't as high as it should have been in the previous fiscal years. But again, for fair, I don't want to make it seem like we're going after them here over the next few years. So I just equalize their debt portion. Since we're paying for it anyways, it has no fiscal impact at all. I'm just equalizing it so that they can't say that we're showing that they have a high debt. But we will keep looking into it. It's a very convoluted process because there's been a lot of debt there was a lot of debt issuances in the 2000s. There was an EDA transaction. There was a lot of things that PON is trying to kind of, again, using forensic fiscal analysis, just trying to track the debt and the shares between city and schools. And it's hard with all the trail to kind of figure out with all the refundings and combining of debts. It was hard to do that. But for at this point, where we've lowered the school's portion of the debt from FY 23 and beyond, so that there is no difference from previous financial models. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And then with all that done, there's still about $83,000 remaining in a contribution to reserves for the FY '22 budget. And that is it for the budget portion.
And was that,
Any questions? Yes.
did that include the second part-time help for the code enforcer?
Yeah, that's the additional $25,000.
That was additional to that. And then 83 left over after.
After all that, yeah. Yep.
Is there a follow-up?
No.
Okay. Any questions?
I've got a question.
Vice Mayor Banks?
The 250,000 for the no commercial overnight parking signs, I thought we had our own sign maker.
Yeah, there's just no way you can do that to scale. Like we're gonna have to replace every single sign across the city. You're talking about like to have our employees build out all those signs and replace them. You're talking about a multi-year process. So once you get the code enacted and you want it to be enforced, you're gonna have to contract out someone to go out there and first build the signs and put them all up. Enforcing on that specific, you don't want to just segment the city into specific parts and start enforcing, or you have a long, drawn-out process to get all the signs up. So we really need to contract that out.
Are you referring to when we were thinking about borrowing or sharing Manassas City's sign maker?
Yes.
Is that
And
it?
I thought we could use it, but apparently, so how many signs can we make with this sign maker? Is it?
Yeah, so it's a two-person job because you have to hold these films, you have to hold them taut while you're placing them on a pretty big piece of blank. So it's a two-person job. We can, right now, most of our guys are taking turns learning the equipment. It's taking anywhere from, 10 to 15 minutes to make a single sign.
Oh.
So if you imagine staffing 2 people full-time to make hundreds upon hundreds of signs, it's just doesn't seem ordering them from a sign manufacturing company. Yeah, they've already got staff dedicated to one thing alone, which is making signs.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, I understand.
Do you have a follow-up? Any last questions or comments? Okay, do you have more?
No, just for the next public hearing.
Okay, so moving on to public comments, is there anyone who would like to make public comment on this particular public hearing? Anyone who sent in an email, phone call, text, anything? Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close the public hearing? Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. The third public hearing is regarding proposed taxes and fees. I declare the public hearing open.
So this is the public hearing on taxes and fees. Here's what we advertise. You can see the red box there down to solid waste. That's what I'm going to focus on tonight. Change the numbers up here. For the trash, we had to take another look at that and make sure that there was that the burden between curbside and dumpster services accurately reflected the cost. This came up out of an inquiry from an department specifically. I don't know if you remember last year there was an department that wanted to get out of their contract, and then we deliberated on that. But there's been follow-up on that, and we started doing a deep dive on kind of the splits between curbside pickup and dumpsters and overhead, seeing what the costs are and overhead, and making sure that the fees match the burden. Unfortunately, in 2017, there was a large rate increase in the curbside and not on the dumpster side. So it threw off the ratio. And Calvin did a good job. I'm going to go over these tables. Please don't freak out right now, but I'll go over them one by one. But Calvin did a very thorough multi-tab revenue analysis. The first thing is the monthly revenue share versus expenditure share of curbside versus non-curbside, the dumpsters, right? So what this is saying is on a monthly basis, you're bringing in roughly $80,000 in curbside revenue and $13,000 in non-curbside revenue. The expenditures, though, are $52,000 for curbside and non-curbside $12,000. So So you can look at the percentage splits of revenues, 85% for curbside versus 14% for non-curbside, and then the expenditures, right? So essentially what this is stating is that the curbside is paying a larger portion of the expenditures than its share of revenues, right? So curbside is subsidizing dumpsters. Does that make sense to everyone? Right? And again, that goes back to that 2017 where they lifted the curbside rates and not the dumpster rate. So we kind of have to fix that alignment to make sure that each resident has an equal burden to cover what their true costs are. Then going forward, looking at it per customer, if you will, you look at, there's 3 different expenditure components for each customer, right? There's 2 expenditure components for each customer, but there's 2 categories of customers, right? You have your curbside customer and your non-curbside, your dumpster customer. Both of them, so each of them pays for their curbside service, or if they're not curbside, they pay for their non-curbside service. They both also pay what's called overhead, administrative components, right? Not just the contract to go pick up your trash, but everything surrounding the full spectrum of the solid waste budget, right? So that's what these cost expenditures break down into to get to our total budget amount, right? What are the cost breakdowns between direct curbside service, direct non-curbside, and indirect costs? Okay? You look at the number of customers between each of those categories, and you're able to determine what the rate should be. So the rate times the number of customers to match their expenditures, right? And then for each, for direct, so this example here, $14.72 is the rate you would charge these 3,820 curbside customers to match their direct curbside cost. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the same thing here for indirect. $10.95 times the 1,200 roughly dumpster customers gives you the amount to cover the direct cost of dumpster collection. However, there's overhead, right? So combining both customers together, because they both have to pay for overhead, this is the total amount, right, of total customers, curbside and non-curbside. And to cover the overhead expenditures, you would need a rate of $5.77. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So to figure out what the true rate should be to make sure that curbside and dumpster, non-curbside, are paying their proper share of direct costs and indirect costs, you have to add this indirect rate on top of the direct rate. Does that make sense? Okay. So when you do that, the rates that we're recommending, next slide I'm going to show you a side-by-side view of what we advertise versus what we're recommending we change these rates to. Okay? The curbside rate now should be $20.49. The way you get that is the $14.72 rate to cover their direct costs, plus the overhead rate of $5.77. Same thing for the non-curbside. $16.72 is made up of the $10.95 for direct costs, $5.77 for the administrative overhead. There's another category, I know just to make this a little bit more confusing, the elderly rate, right? We have this tax relief program for our senior citizens, for elderly and disabled, where they get to apply to the Commissioner of Revenue's office for tax relief for the real estate program. The seniors that are part of that program can also apply for the utility relief, which gives them this lower solid waste fee of $5.58. And this is the number of customers that you have there, 70, right? So you notice these two numbers are different. This is the actual budget amount. It includes that extra $5,000. That's budget. Everyone's paying their fair share. Does that all make sense? Okay. So this is again the match. This is what we advertised. Again, the top bar is what we advertise, the current rate, and then the proposed increased rate in order to balance the budget. Okay. This is the new recommended rates that we're proposing. So you can see curbside goes down because again, they've been paying a larger share than what they should be compared to dumpsters. So curbside would go down by close to $2 per month. So close to $24 in a year for curbside customers. The non-curbside would go up to $16.72, and then the elderly rate stays the same as what was proposed. And remember how we got to these numbers, right? Just it's
and more accurate reflection. So I know this is a change in the fee, and I've been talking with our city attorney about the best way to handle this for transparency purposes, is that we don't close this public hearing tonight. We keep it open. We have this on the website. People can keep looking at this. We continue the public hearing at the next meeting, and then you can decide, can they vote on it next meeting, or do we have to wait till the 22nd?
For this?
Yeah.
I think just the budget's the only one, right?
Okay.
I think.
So I couldn't hear what you said.
I think the budget's the only one we have to wait 7 days, but I can verify that.
So
I think we're good on this.
So when we set a date certain to be continued, it can be June 14th,
June 15th.
Yeah, next Tuesday.
which is June,
Is it 15th?
is it 15? 14 or 15? 15. 15, thank you.
So are there any questions about that and how we got to this number?
Any questions? Okay. Hasib, any questions?
No.
And there's a little bit more to add to this. I mentioned the seniors. So history with our city, of course, is fraught with kind of interesting issues that pop up. So for some reason, the Park Place senior apartments have just not been built at all. I'm not sure when that started. See if it was governing body action, directing don't build Park Place, provide some kind of tax relief. We found nothing there, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be billing, right? That it's about $24,879 in lost revenue if you're to charge them the dumpster, okay? If we don't want to bill them, you would need the general fund subsidy to cover them. Right? And that's a kind of a better way versus increasing curbside and non-curbside rates to subsidize them. You do not want to do that, right? You want to make it a governing body policy, a general fund subsidy to cover, if that's something you want to do. Or it's a $16,576 subsidy if we want to bill them at the senior rate, right? Right now, again, to get that senior rate, it's an application process for property owners, right? They're not property owners here, so I don't know if we had to do like a separate code, or again, just a policy of what we would bill them, and then the general fund would subsidize the rest. I'm just giving you kind of options for how to address this if you don't want to bill them the full dumpster amount, because that's not something they've had. We're still in the midst of COVID. There's I know a lot of anxiety here. This would be something, it'd be tough, I think, for them to kind of take this on now. Not to say that that's the wrong answer, but I want to always give you all options that we can have for this. But I don't know why, again, they just weren't built. But when Calvin did the deep dive, looking at every single kind of billing transaction, we noticed that they were off. The other interesting component was the cottages of separate units. They're getting the elderly rate, but they haven't applied for that program in order, again, do they really qualify for that elderly tax relief program. So they've been getting the senior solid waste rate, when in reality they should be getting the dumpster. So the elderly rates generate about $1,600 in FY22, while the dumpster rate will generate $4,800, right? So you're talking about a $3,200 difference in a potential subsidy if you want to keep their kind of the same program going of them getting and again, we just don't know as staff how that happened, like what the history is behind it. It's been an ongoing thing that's just has been in existence since I think they were created.
So it was not billed from day one when Park Place was built?
There's no evidence so far that we have that it's been built. And we try to go through the minutes. It's just like the audit again, where you kind of have to go back in history, and it's hard to find.
Difficult to reconstruct.
Correct. So again, I provide you some numbers here just in case you want to think through this again. We have that surplus. That's why I highlighted that also in that last slide, the $83,000 surplus. If at least for this year, if we want to slowly kind of transition them, this is going to come as a shock to them to start getting either a bill that they've never received before, right, or an increase amount, a dramatic increase in the amount. You're talking about from $5.50 up to $16 for the cottages.
So our cushion of 80,000 would go down to roughly 60,000.
If you all
If
decide
we-
to do
The subsidy.
correct, yeah. So you could do the 24,000, 30. It's either 20,000 or 30,000. So it depends. If you want to just completely subsidize and say, place and we're just not gonna bill at all, it's the 30,000. If you wanna say no, we're gonna just charge them the elderly tax rate, for both cottages and apartments, it's $20,000, the subsidy. If you say bill them, then it's $0 up to you.
Have we contacted?
Yes.
Have we contacted the
No.
apartments management
No.
You-
I would
don't
think
need
to
guidance
start
from
there.
you all. Yeah.
and see?
What's that?
I would think we would start there to see what their view is.
Well, they'll say full subsidy.
Yeah,
No, I'm not asking them, we're not asking them that question, is,
Yeah.
what would be the impact on their residents if we start charging them their equal and fair share?
Well, for those who haven't been billed, I can tell you that.
Not for past, but going
No,
forward.
you're going forward, yeah, but
Going
remember,
forward.
they haven't
wouldn't
been
be
billed this whole
retroactive.
time.
No, we're not.
They haven't been billed this whole time, so you're talking about $200 of extra utility billing per year for the senior apartment residents.
Is that for $200 per person?
Yeah, per unit.
Per
Per
unit.
unit?
And is that a nonprofit operation, or is it for profit? How are they organized?
That I don't know. I mean,
It's for profit.
Oh, that's an easier decision. Okay. I
Yeah,
get it.
but regardless if it's for or not, they're gonna pass it on to, like, so
To the
I live in an
residents.
apartment.
But they're
now.
obviously making profit off the residents, so maybe they just have to make less profit. I mean,
Well,
that's
we
up
can't
to them.
force them to do that.
Do you-
Well, I know, you can't.
Do you need direction from us this evening, or would we have time to think about this?
You have time to think about it, but that kind of direction is helpful, like if you want us to make contact with them. If there's things, other homework that you want us to do, I do want to hear that tonight. I'm not expecting a decision tonight,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
you know, any follow-up homework that you want us to do.
Can you
Yeah.
look at like a phased-in approach to see how that would work?
Well,
So
that-
it's
I
not
think-
too great of a shock?
Yes.
Right.
So that's why I talked, remember I gave Councilmember Hampton those options, if you want to just do the elderly rate this year, that's the $20,000 subsidy. If you want to do the full dumpster rate, it's the $30,000.
Well, I mean phasing in the senior rate.
Oh, so going from, like, so what rate would you want to go to?
Well, eventually to the senior rate.
I know, but
If
for
that's
FY22.
the will of the governing body.
Yeah, but for FY22, what are you looking for?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I would have to think about that.
And I have a question about FY22. How feasible is it to come to some sort of, to talk to them, get an iron out and execute it, so July 1, whatever rate is decided, if we decide to go that route, it can happen.
What do you mean by it?
So, sorry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So within the next, we're, 23 days? Because there's 30 days in June. The next 23 days, is it feasible to speak with the apartment complex owner, management, come to some sort of agreement on whatever we decide, whether that's the senior rate, the full rate, and have that executed by July 1?
There's no agreement that has to be done, like, there's no contract or anything that
Okay.
you have to do with them, so there's nothing really to negotiate with them. You guys set the fees to every resident, again, to every apartment complex. I live in apartments, so the apartment property managers, they pay it, but then they bill the resident that amount, right? So that's theoretically what would happen here. So there's nothing to negotiate. Certainly we can solicit their input, but again, you guys decide what the rates are.
Councilmember Moore?
What other senior facility, homes, do we subsidize their refuse pickup? Rate?
This is the unique place, the only kind of senior full living. There are other residents, again, when we go back to this slide, the 78 other single family or townhome residents.
They have to go through a process to register,
Correct.
to be approved, and, which is
Absolutely.
great. So we have seniors, I mean, there's an equity issue, that are living in homes and houses that are paying the full rate, that aren't being subsidized by the city. And then all of a sudden, we're saying we're gonna subsidize these chosen few, that I have problems with.
Again, I'm just giving you all options.
I know, I'm just putting an argument out there. I understand.
Madam Mayor, I have a question,
Yes.
because there's arguments for and against this, and I still have to weigh this. But my suggestion would be, in your discussions with the management, is that if we go this route of phasing in and taxing them at the senior rate, for, I guess, for them to understand that they have to apply for the senior discount, they just can't automatically get it, or do you want
I
to
think we have
automatically
to
give it to
amend
them?
our code, you know, that's.
If I can just chime in here, so the senior discount is not, that's not really what it's called, it's elderly and disabled. Okay, and there are certain income requirements, and it also requires you to actually own a house. Okay, because it's based upon the state authorized real estate property tax relief, okay, for elderly and disabled. We've used that criteria here in the city for this purpose, but really, I don't know how you can do it for an apartment complex, because they're renting, and so basically if, let's say, 10 people out of 100 get it, well, now you're just going to spread that out. I mean, the owner of the apartment complex isn't going to reduce the rent of that particular apartment. They're going to just equalize it out, so it's not really fair that way either. So there's an income requirement. I'm not sure how many people would meet that requirement if we were to allow apartments to qualify, but none of those apartments do. Now, the cottages, are they owned? They're rented too, so none of these really should qualify. So now, that being said, if you decide that because this is entirely a senior complex and you want to subsidize it because it is unique, I mean, that's something you can do, but
Would
bear
that
in mind
require
that,
us- Would that require writing it into code?
yeah, you don't have any authority right now in the city code. And then just keep in mind, if you ever have another senior complex that comes in, you know, you've set a precedent.
Okay, Councilmember Javed?
Yeah, I mean, like Dean said, if we even subsidize, the renters are not going to see those savings.
No, they're not.
They're not. So they're just gonna, like you were saying, they're just gonna, you know.
Well, I'm not sure that's accurate. So if
So
we're
they'll
billing
reduce-
the apartment complex $16 per resident, now they're not getting billed anything, so
Right.
they're paying zero right now.
Right.
We bill them $16,
Right.
right? Let's assume they pass on that $16 to the residents. Now those residents are paying $16 a month, whereas currently they're paying zero. If we subsidize them and don't build the apartment complex, then they still pay zero. So the subsidy does prevent them from paying. I'm not saying it's the right
Or
policy.
you prevent them from increasing the rent or the condo fees or whatever.
Well, it's not that. Think of it as kind of utilities, right? So in
Right.
apartments, you pay your rent, but then they also itemize your water and sewer bills and your trash bill that the property managers have to pay to the municipality, right? And then they pass it on to the residents. So that's likely what would occur here. We would bill them per unit, right? What the amount is, and then theoretically they could decide not to charge their residents. That's on them if they want to do that themselves. I don't think we have any ability to force them to do that.
But so I think we're talking about two different things. One is a complete subsidy, and the other is allowing individuals to qualify for the senior discount or the elderly and disabled relief.
No, I was just specifically addressing the point of the subsidy.
Okay.
If we do subsidize, they won't seem to save.
Oh, yeah, I was talking about individuals who
Individual,
qualify.
yeah, so individual
Right.
owners, they won't see that. But he's talking about the apartment complex, you're talking about landlords.
Yeah, because we bill complexes, we don't bill individuals. They don't have individual meters.
So how many units are at Park Place?
178.
178.
78.
So
Do you have a follow-up?
I was just trying to see how did you come up with the 200 per unit?
That's annual, 200 annual.
Yeah, $16 divided by 12.
That's
1672 times 12.
So $200 annual divided by 12, so $16 extra.
So how many units are in?
That's very good.
$124.
Yeah, I was just doing that.
Councilmember Nancy?
I have a
Did y'all
question.
hear that?
No.
124 apartment units and 24 cottages.
So if we were to subsidize them, would that open us up to someone else who gets wind of this and is like, well, why do I have to pay?
Yeah, I think it would.
That's a problem.
Yeah, big problem.
If you got a renter in a house, you know, that's a senior, and we're not requiring any kind of income, well, they don't have to meet the income requirements. All they have to be as a senior, then we really open ourselves up to subsidizing every senior. And it's a tenant.
So as the law-
Administratively, that's a nightmare.
It
This
is.
one's easy because it's one individual entity, but if you have to have every single senior from across all apartments or renters now applying,
Yeah.
yeah.
So as the law is written right now, they would have to be a homeowner.
Right.
question is kind of tangent to Councilmember Menson's. So if we should change the code and we take out the requirement for that you have to be a homeowner, that would, and we don't have anything there that says you have to live in a senior housing, that could apply to any apartment complex, right?
Any
Right.
renter, any-
Well, yeah, renters, yeah, tenant anywhere.
Okay.
That,
Just wanted to
that,
double check.
that could be a large hit.
It could be.
I mean, it really could.
And you wouldn't be able to raise the rates within the solid waste fund to make others subsidize it. You have to subsidize it
Yeah.
from
That
the
would
general
not be
fund.
fair. Vice Mayor Banks.
And then it's difficult, like you said, because the apartment complexes are owned by the normal company. It's hard to tell if it's gonna pass down to the senior.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we bill for trash on the same bill that we bill for water. And we don't have individual meters for those units, so that's why they just all get the same rate. And then also picking out the seniors that qualify out of all those and giving them a specialized bill probably would be an administrative nightmare as well.
I think we should face it, face it in, like, give them tiny piece of it, and then charge the amount that they're supposed to be getting
So
them.
we start with the 558 and then go
And
up.
then go up to whatever needs to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So next year, we're going to have a new contract, so maybe the goal should be to get them up to everyone else by the new contract.
Yeah.
Good point,
Yes.
good point.
And then that way they can transition in the
How
year
much
that we
time
have.
would that be?
Well, we have a year, because it would kick in July 1st of next year. And I don't know, Calvin, we were planning on putting that RFP on the streets, but, you know, it would be with enough time to transition and to know what the hit would be for the subsequent budget year.
Are any last comments or discussion?
Trash collection
Would
RFP?
we face it in quarterly? Is that the thought?
Please just do your FY22 number. Don't have the treasurer change Keystone every 3 months.
Just pick a number at
Pick
the
a
very
number, go
beginning,
with that,
rip the Band-Aid
FY22,
off.
then FY23, you can go another step higher, the full amount. Again, we're dealing with a not a user-friendly software system. Whoever was trying to pay their bill this last week knows exactly that. It's trying to make changes in Keystone. I request that we please limit that burden on staff that way.
Thank you.
Councilwoman
I just have a comment. Most of these renters, they're locked in a lease too. So it's not like we're gonna charge them 30 or whatever the amount is,
Right.
and they're gonna
change it.
immediately change it,
Exactly.
right? They have to wait until the lease terminates first to apply any more. So basically, I mean, it's common practice. I mean, we could apply this FY22 if we wanted to. For now,
But you're saying that the property manager wouldn't be able to charge them this week?
the lease is locked in, so unless the lease terminates, the yearly lease, then
Well,
they could change the fee.
Unless the lease is written to have, you know, the cost, the trash collection cost as a separate additional rent, if you will.
I mean, that's you have to read the lease. I mean, most leases they're locked in.
You're right.
Yeah,
But they also have additional rent
yeah,
in there, and you never know what it says until you look at the lease.
yeah. Yeah, just a comment.
Your water and sewer is always very good too. You know, your renter, they're charging different amounts for water too.
So phasing it in, when would the first increase be? Starting this
July
July
1st.
1st? Okay. And then it would increase again on the next July 1st? Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Sorry to bring this up, but we were shocked when we
Yes.
saw this in the
I can imagine.
And just a lot of outreach is going to be required between now and July
Absolutely.
1st.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be a lot of consternation. Okay. Do you have more last time?
Yes.
I'm afraid to
Good or
ask.
bad?
Okay. So is that kind of decided, or do you want to think about this? Or you all decide on that 5?
I don't see where we have a choice, but
We
let's,
don't have a choice.
comments?
Yeah, the elderly rate, or the elderly disabled rate for this year. Basically,
Yeah, phase it in elderly rate. Next year, we have a new rate based on the RFP.
Are we all in agreement on that?
Yeah, we don't have a choice, and it's an equity issue. as Councilmember
We really
mentioned.
don't have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the cottages? They're already paying the elderly rate right now.
Well, they need to go up when the others go up.
So they just stay on the elderly rate, and then next year, July 1st, they go up
I
to the
would
full
think
amount?
that would be.
I think
It'd
for,
be easier for us.
yeah, and it's just, it lessens confusion on the residents
Yeah.
there.
Probably be a little easier to accept that now all of a sudden you're paying what your neighbors have been paying all
So
along.
if they start comparing notes,
Right.
which they may. Okay,
That's all I have.
that's all you have. Is anyone signed up to make public comment on the proposed taxes increase? Any emails, any texts, phone calls? Okay. Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to continue the public hearing to June 15th?
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, there's no recognitions, no information presentations, no consent agenda. Moving on to unfinished business, I believe it's city attorney settlement agreement with Novak.
Yeah, so as you know, we've had a disagreement with Novak for a while on how to apportion the cost for relocating Novak's utilities associated with the widening of Connor Drive. We ended up filing a lawsuit primarily just to force the issue. Since then, we've come up with an agreement where we just split the costs, and then that way we can kind of move forward and hopefully get back on a good amicable relationship with them. We are the only jurisdiction in their customer base that is entirely Novak. So, we are unique, and I think at one time we had a very good relationship with them based on that. And I think there's a desire to try to get back there, and this goes a long way to try to move down that road. So I'll entertain any questions you have, but this is primarily what the direction you gave to me, and they accepted our counteroffer. And so, if you'll approve this tonight and authorize the mayor to sign it, then we should get this put to rest rather quickly.
Thank you, Dean. Any comments or questions? Okay. Appears to be none.
If that's the case, I ask that you authorize the mayor to sign this, approve the agreement and
Okay,
authorize.
would you please state the motion?
Okay, the motion would be to approve the settlement agreement as presented, or a settlement agreement with Novak as presented, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Dean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Negotiations well done. Okay, moving on to new business FY21 budget amendment pre-presentation.
Good evening again. This is kind of going to be a three-parter. I forgot to upload the spreadsheet, so I'm going to do a presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to the police to do a presentation that's part of the budget amendment. While they're doing that, I'm going to upload the spreadsheet and just walk you through the spreadsheet, because there's again, a bunch of columns, so I want to just you all to understand how to read the spreadsheet for the third budget amendment. So tonight, just like for every budget amendment, I'll just go over what the positive changes are. With positive, that means more revenue or less expenditures. Negative changes, which would mean less revenue or more expenditures, and then no fiscal impact changes. Like if you get a grant and it's on, it covers 100% of the costs. That's an example of no fiscal impact change. Then we'll turn it over to Petey first, then I'll open up the Excel file and talk about some next steps here. Summarize some positive financial impacts. Parking fines, again, the revenue just keep growing, so we want to factor that into the budget. So continual spending reductions in Parks and Rec, just to again continue reducing kind of requirements as just the customer numbers just haven't been there, so we see a decrease in revenues overall in the year and decrease in expenses as well. We have this new game of skills tax revenue, $53,000 this fiscal year. What this is, these are actual slot machines that are now in our city, across the city, and a lot of restaurants and bars and 7-Elevens. They all are now authorized to put in gas stations. They're authorized now to put in gambling machines. So it's in our city, and so the state calls it game of skills tax, and we receive a check monthly from the state for these machines. So we're projecting we had roughly $53,000 in FY21. This was already part of the FY22 budget, it's just there was so much in 22 and focus on that, but that was something in account for in 21 that we're now adding to the budget amendment. And then just an additional projected surplus, or this surplus allows for $89,000 extra contribution to the reserves. So negative financial impacts. So the hazard pay for those governing body members who weren't here last year. So we did, using the CARES Act money, we did a hazard pay bonus for our employees. However, when we looked into kind of the language of the act, it was pretty clear, as most jurisdictions were looking at this, that only police, fire, DSS, and then Parks and Rec, simply because Parks and Rec had been directly involved in our COVID-19 response, only those employees qualified for CARES Act funded hazard pay. However, the governing body didn't want to not provide a hazard pay bonus or stipend, if you will, to other employees who had been working throughout the pandemic as well. It was supposed to be charged in 20, it wasn't, so it was kind of a carryover for the what are called quote-unquote funded by CARES Act. So that's something that was supposed to be charged in 20. It didn't, it got charged in 21. So it's actually 21. It was already approved by the governing body before. Does that make sense? And then again, the FICA for that as well. So we did, and for FICA, we also did this calculation, but the other item that was approved by the governing body as well was the health insurance premiums rose in FY21. So the governing body wanted to cover the difference from what we were paying in 20 versus what employees were paying in 21. And so that difference, we budgeted for it for the payment, but it wasn't factored into the calculation for FICA. So FICA is the Social Security and Medicare payment, so that caused a bump up of that, along with that hazard pay that was supposed to be charged in 20, that was charged in 20. IT, so just additional part-time salary costs as we're going through all these CARES Act implementations for all these software, just getting that additional part-time support, and then we also have the part-time support requirement when Ashley was out on maternity leave. We had to have additional IT support with everything going on. The police department, the market system, the mental health awareness response, and community understanding services. This is called the alert system, a great 911 platform. That's what PD is going to be presenting on tonight, just to give you a little bit more information on that. But that's a state mandate that we have to have implemented by July 1st. It's focused on expanding our capabilities to service those who have mental health issues. So PD is going to spend some more time. They'll have a separate presentation on that. Fire department, this is just a carryover from FY20 that we forgot about for ABL. This is a CIP. We got all the carryovers in the mid-year budget amendment. For some reason, we missed this one. So we're requesting to add that back into the budget amendment. Library services, this was an agenda item from January 12th. I know it's a lifetime ago now at this point, but you all authorized us to approve in a future budget amendment the increase in state revenues that we received for materials to make sure we spend it on materials. If we don't, then the state can reduce the future funds. So if you have any questions about it, please reference back to that January 12th agenda item because it covers all the details for that one. Parks and Rec, just ongoing revenue losses again from programming due to the pandemic, and community development just had a little bit more in zoning advertising costs than what we were previously planning. And then for those neutral or no financial impacts, a safety grant that was received from the Virginia VRSA, that's our insurance carrier. These were utilized for Parks and Rec walk systems for their dividers that weren't secured. We were able to secure them with this grant. DSS, they just keep getting, as you saw in FY22, just additional funding for foster care education training. So in 21, they're getting $5,000. You see in 22, but just a lot more for this specific purpose as well. This was unplanned in FY21. Public Works, pretty good sales of surplus equipment. Requesting to reinvest it in new equipment for Public Works. And I had the list, unfortunately, I left it in my office, and I can't access my office today. So I was planning on picking it up before this meeting, completely forgot. So I apologize for that. I can follow up with any emails with more details on that one if there's any interest. Same thing with the fire department, 34,000. So the state gives every year the fire department two kind of quasi grants. It's called 4 for Life and 8 to Locality. Both of those grants have a fund balance, so carry over. They're part of our audit in terms of restricted funding, but the state wants jurisdictions to spend that down. So you'll see in the spreadsheet there's a tab called Departmental Fund Balances, and it shows the total amount. We're requesting to be able to spend those two fund balances down. The majority of this money is going to be used to replace all of our hoses that have to be replaced every certain amount of years. So we're going to use this money for that purpose. And there was some other additional eye simulator training, stethoscope for training our EMS employees as well, and then new gear for new hires that we have as well. The police ICAC is a small grant, $6,000 for computers to assist our police with internet crimes against children. So this is another grant that we got for the purpose. Registrar's office, they also received a separate pot of CARES Act money for the presidential elections, which they spent. We didn't know at that time when we were doing the budget amendment what it was actually going to be. It was more like schools. Like schools, I believe, had to spend the money and then seek reimbursement. That was the same thing with the registrar, where they had to kind of spend down an approved kind of allotment that they received, whereas for us, we got a deposit and we got to kind of spend the money there. So the registrar ended up spending about $21,000 in CARES Act revenue in support of doing the presidential elections during the pandemic. And then there was just more minor redistribution to match accurate principal and interest amounts between the street sweeper payments that we have between water and sewer and stormwater, but no financial impact on that one. Any questions on these three categories?
Questions? Go ahead.
CARES Act, this was probably the biggest reason why we had to do this budget amendment. So we budgeted certain amounts across the 9 programs that we delineated about a year ago now to spend the CARES Act money on. What this budget amendment does, it just aligns closer to what actually happened. It just aligns everything. What did we actually spend the money on? So the budget amounts match what the actual amounts are as well. We want everything to track, because we just don't know if we're going to be audited by the federal government or not. So we're going to do everything we can, just get kind of full accountability, have everything on the record about what was actually spent and aligning everything with budget amounts as well. So you can see this table just kind of delineating by program what we budgeted, and we came pretty close actually for these items, and what we actually ended up spending across the different programs for CARES Act. So that was kind of the biggest kind of thing that we did in this budget. Any questions on that? So what I'm going to do now is turn over to police while I bring up the spreadsheet.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Governing Body. I'm Captain Borman with the Manassas Police Department, obviously. So I'm here just to explain Marcus Alert a little bit and then how it's going to impact our dispatch center. So I'm not sure if any of you have actually heard about it, but the Marcus Alert is the mental health awareness, response, and community understanding service. It was implemented in the 2020 special session, the House Bill 5043, passed on November 5th of 2020. We were advised in around May, that this has to be in place and implemented by July 1st. So we're kind of on a time crunch a little bit. It has two different parts to the Marcus Alert. So the major part is that it's going to provide a therapist. So if someone calls 911, they're in a mental crisis and it's not to the amount that justifies the police responding, it would be diverted off to a therapist for the therapist to either talk to over the phone, or there will be therapists also available to respond to the scene versus police going to kind of de-escalate use of force issues with police and mental. The part that impacts us the most, I already went by that, sorry. The part part that affects us the most will be the alert system. It's a voluntary system that any citizen can log into this website that eventually we will release the website address. And you can voluntarily sign up yourself or family, give all of your health issues, concerns, not just mental, it can be any health related issues. It will relate also to your phone number or to your address or your workplace, whatever you put on the system. There we go, and then I'll go backwards one. So again, it is capable of doing COVID-19 also. Hopefully we're almost to the end of that, so we don't need to go backwards. But like I said, any kind of health issue or medical, if you're diabetic or high blood pressure, any of that, you can label all of that on there. So as soon as you call 911 and either your address or your phone number pops, our dispatch center will see that profile you've created. So that will give us immediate information to relay on to the officers or medical that's responding to your location. So I'm going to go back. So the one reason we chose the Rave 911 suite is because it has additional functions that we find to be beneficial to our department. So what the facilities is we'll be able to have a floor plan layout of every building in the city should they want to create a profile. It would also allow us to do text 911, which we are in the process of getting that capability, but currently we have like 5 different programs that this one program can do everything and consolidate us going to different screens. Everything will be on that one screen for us to see. The Smart 911 is what I just advised. The Rapid SOS it will give us an immediate location of where you are. If you call from a cell phone, it'll give us a ping location. It also has the feature that if I send you a text to your cell phone, you can click that link and give me a live view of where you are, should you not have any clue where you're at. So you'll be able to give me a live picture. The panic button will be more for like our schools or city hall, the fire department. You'll have access to be able to hit this alarm. We have the capability of paging employees in the building to let them know that lockdown or we have this situation going on in the building, fire alarm, something like that. It also alerts the dispatch center at the same time. The Rave Alert is kind of what we have already with Everbridge. However, Everbridge is only for emergencies. It's not supposed to be used for anything else. The Rave Alert will be our own system that we can do whatever we want with it. As far as your trash isn't coming today, we can page that out. We can also page the snow emergencies, which that does fall under Everbridge because it's a snow emergency. But we will use just this system instead of Everbridge because this system is a lot easier to use. It's 3 buttons and the page is sent out instead of us spending 15 minutes to figure out how to use Everbridge and get that sent out. So with the profile that you set up, you'll be able to choose what alerts you want, what times you want them. If you're going to be gone, you can turn off the alert system. It's all from a desktop, or there's mobile apps also, so it'll be more convenient for everyone. It automatically has the user update their profile every 6 months. So if someone moves, hopefully they would log in and let us know so we don't have to get a false alert out of the house. It also, if someone registers in Manassas Park, it's going to pop on their dispatch center also. As of right now, they're the only ones right here within close proximity that's using that. Everyone out, like Orange County and that way, is currently using the same one. I'm not sure what the other agencies are going to go to. It is able to translate to 60 supported languages, and that's your choice as you log on to the app. You choose what language you want the messages in. So I send it out the same way. It automatically translates for you. It also goes to all the social media websites, so you can choose whatever app you have, social media you have to send that. The iPhone is also included in this, so if you're driving through the jurisdiction, you would get the alert also if you have a cell phone. So it's broken went down. It shows it for 3 years. Currently, we only signed for the 1-year contract, which was the $14,650, which 1,350 of that is the initial startup fee, and then the yearly fee is 13,300. This is able to be paid for with the CARES Act or the American Rescue Plan, should you guys decide to use those funds to pay for it. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Captain. My question is, when the alarm comes in and the profile pops up, does the profile determine the expertise of the staffer who eventually responds, or the professional who responds?
As far as in Manassas Park, our goal is to have all of our patrol units 100% certified trained. With the turnover rate, I keep dropping on that number, but we currently are about 85%. We have 3 more registered to go this year to training, so all of our officers will be CIT trained to respond to any of these calls.
That's wonderful.
We'll just advise. It'll help us determine what the issue is before we ever get there.
Questions or comments?
I do have a question. This is actually a pretty neat program, but my question is regarding the senior citizens that don't have internet access. Has there been thought of how to get their information or engage them with this program?
I have not yet, but I'm assuming I don't know if Park Place has a computer at their location or not, but we could go there and advertise it with them and try to have them sit down and set it up. The problem with that being the 6-month renewal where it tries to get them to log in. But I'm sure we can arrange something with that to go back every 6 months and try to update those.
I'm also thinking just not Park Place, but folks that live in houses, apartments.
Part of the Marcus Alert is we have to advertise, so we'll probably send something in the water bill probably. Everyone usually gets one of those at the house, but we could also, I'm going to have officers hand out business cards regarding it also. So any kind of interaction we have with people, we can hand those out. Hopefully get them set up somehow.
Thank you.
Councilmember Warren.
Yeah, mine's closely aligned with Councilmember Hampton. How do we plan to market this plan? Because it seems to me that the number of folks that are actually put their profile in the database system, it benefits the system. So the more profiles we have, the better the system is. So how do we market that and encourage people to actually take the time out and fill out a profile?
Like I was advising, I am going to try to, I am in the process of having like business cards handed out or made so that we can hand those out to advertise. And then any of the city events that we have, we usually have stuff on the table that we try to talk, and that's how we did Everbridge. It'll be on all of our websites, but as far as, if you have any ideas, I'm willing to take them.
Well, will the materials be in Spanish as well, or marketing
Yes.
materials? Okay.
Usually what we do with flyers is we'll have English on one side and Spanish on the other.
Actually, I do have a quick idea. Sure. I don't know how feasible it is, but especially when a lot of the elderly folks do come in and pay their bills in person, is it possible to have a police officer or some sort of outreach person here around that time to kind of recruit those individuals to use the program and sign up?
Sure, I'm sure we can arrange possibly.
We're very short-staffed with
Right.
officers right now,
Yeah.
but it is something, especially if this is ARPA eligible. What we did with our vaccination, if you notice, we set up booths at City Hall to sign people up to get vaccinated, so that's something we can do with this as well.
That's why I said another outreach individual.
Yeah, another outreach individual, absolutely.
Thank you.
Question.
Vice Mayor Banks?
Yes. So this is a voluntary program for users, and it doesn't preclude us from suggesting or even encouraging people to sign up. So, for instance, my question is, if say a police officer happens to have an incident with a citizen that does have mental health issues, can the officer suggest or encourage that person to sign up for this?
We can. We were going to hand out stuff to the citizens anytime we have interaction. And it doesn't even have to be just that person. We could give it to the family member,
Okay.
and they can register their family member off of their profile. And these profiles, like, I can't just log in and see anybody's profile. I won't see your profile unless you call 911, and then it'll pop up for us.
Councilman?
Yeah, I got 3 questions. For the therapist part, so each department is going to be hiring a therapist?
No, that's through the county,
So the-
CSB,
Yeah.
the Community Service Board.
So that therapist will be used multiple jurisdictions?
Correct.
And then, is there an officer going with them, or like,
So there's 4 different tiers.
yeah,
It's still in the process, but there's 4 different tiers. One would be no officer at all, just a phone call
Yeah.
from the therapist. The second tier, I believe the therapist responds by themselves.
Hmm.
The third tier is the therapist responds, but the officer stays back. And then
Yeah.
4th is obviously there's a weapon involved, more
Right.
threat than.
yeah, I
responding.
figured they probably won't know the situation
Correct.
until
I will,
they get,
yeah, I will tell you, so this is, right now, it's being, the CSB is kind of taking the
Yeah.
lead in it and trying to kind of create a regional framework, but it's just not going to be effective unless we have the resources
yeah,
on hand. So it is something that we are looking at for what it would entail for us to make sure that we do have a mental health specialist that can accompany our officers so on call.
I think it's a good
at
idea.
all times,
yeah.
but that, of course, that's going to cost something. We're going to explore grants as well,
Yeah.
but we're looking at the planning right now of what the staffing would need to look like and the personnel, and then we could try to target grants. It may be ARPA eligible funding.
Yeah.
That's something we can look at, but right now we're in the planning process because we're not as confident. I think the CSP is a good kind of regional approach, especially for their facility where you can take people.
Right.
But the strategy of one county facility for a therapist or 2 to respond to everything that's happening in the county, our residents are just not going to see the benefit of that. So that's something we are
Yeah.
planning.
Another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just have a follow-up. Which I just forgot. Can people that are, I guess, can suicidal individuals call 911 versus the hotline and talk to a therapist with this program?
So if they call 911 and our dispatcher believes that it's just suicidal and they're not in harm's way at that moment,
Yeah.
they will divert it over to the therapist
Okay.
versus dispatching the police.
So I think a lot of people, they don't know the hotline number, right?
Right.
So 911 would be easier for someone to talk to.
Right.
It goes through a therapist. That's
Yes,
excellent.
we would then
Yeah.
transfer them off to a therapist, and it would be a hand-to-hand. It wouldn't
Right.
be a, they sit on hold and wait for someone
Right.
to answer. It's gonna be given straight to
That's
them.
excellent. Yeah.
Aren't they coming up with a number? A new number
They
as
are.
well?
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they are coming up with a
Do you remember
number.
what the number was?
I think it's 811, but it's not in place.
They're coming up with a
Is it a
number
three-digit
number?
specifically for mental health issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
right now
very
that
simple.
7-digit number. I mean, who's gonna remember
Yeah.
that? No.
No, they're coming up with something simple, but it's not, like, everything's in the works, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but there's a deadline of July 1st, and it's a whole lot of unknowns.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Vice Mayor Banks?
So my question's about, it's a whole nother angle, about costs. So for 3 years, it seems like a good deal, and I think after 3 years, we'll have a certain amount of users, and so they'll have a, my concern is that after the 3 years, will the price escalate significantly? Now that we've got the users and are used to using the system, this company's kind of got us. We can't go to another company, right?
I've been told it's by population, not by users.
Okay.
Is the way, because he asked how much our population was
Mm-hmm.
and how many square miles we were.
But did he give you any type of indication that the price won't significantly increase after 3 years?
Do you remember anything?
No.
I don't remember.
Very few guarantees on anything.
That's true. There are a few guarantees.
Right.
I mean, it could go away after 3 years.
We're locked in for 3
I don't see
years.
it going away, but it could.
Okay.
And software programs usually try to match by jurisdiction size, as I was saying there. So Esri's a good example. They're kind of a quasi monopoly, not fully. There are other GIS platforms, but they are just dominating market share, and they still have affordable small jurisdiction pricing levels. So the hope would be that most software companies continue that way.
So will we get a user list or user database for our area, so that in case we do switch companies, we could at least contact our users and let them know, hey, we're switching to a new app or company?
I can see like the user's address, the email address is all I can see. I can't see their profile unless they call 911. So I will have a list of everybody's email that's signed up.
Just your email? Okay.
You were talking talking about if we change vendors. Is
Yes,
that
if
what
we
you're-
change vendors, we have a
Yeah.
list of the users,
Do we
so
get
at
a, do we
least,
get a data dump?
right,
Yeah.
so we can at least contact them and inform them, so we're not stuck with this.
So
Company.
maintaining ownership of the
We
data.
own our data.
Right.
Yeah, okay. We don't know, do we, or do we?
I believe it's on cloud based. It's not, I have access to it, but I don't have it on our server.
You can export it out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't want to assume
Sure.
that.
I wouldn't either.
That's a business model right there.
That would, that might be part of the contract, maybe,
I would have to look at
ownership of data.
Yeah, I think we're gonna bring a contract next week. for approval.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just curious if we could check on any other
Just-
council member.
My comments more on Councilmember Banks' line of questioning about funding, but mine more for the art funding. As I understand, this is a long-term commitment that the state is requiring of us to be effective July 1st. And this art money is one-time money, so I really hope that we don't use one-time monies for this. This is not appropriate. Because in year 4 or 5, we won't have art money, and we'll still have to fund it from our base. So we should figure out how we're gonna pay for this going forward. Just a comment on my part.
Yeah, we can use for implementation.
I understand.
Yeah, that's, at least a
But
couple
then,
of
but
years.
then it goes away and then we have the 13.3 every year.
Yeah,
So we hope we'll build that in our base. and
yeah, you have to
not
build it in your long range budget.
The
Use
theory
art money.
behind the raises was that the budget would grow into it. So maybe the budget could grow into
I hope
this,
so.
Yeah,
if it had to be done that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to if we're doing this, right?
Right.
This is a mandatory expenditure. My hope would be that the state would bump up their funding that they're providing
I'm
to
not
us
gonna hold my
versus
breath.
just mandating. But yeah, we'll, whatever, that's why I do the 10-year budgets. It's because of that very issue. When we just do 1-year budgets, you don't look at those things, and then 4 years down the road, it's just, oops, now I have this new, but that's why we do 10-year budgeting here, just to see what the long-term impacts are of decisions to.
Councilmember Amaya, did you have a question?
Yes, regarding the therapists, they're provided by the county, you said?
Yes, Prince William County CSD is who takes all of our,
And do they have multiple language speaking therapists?
yes, they do.
They,
Last minute comments?
Just one last one. Is this program considered one of the top ones, or in the universe of programs like this?
This one came highly recommended from Prince William County. That's who they currently use and have had for a while. We currently don't have anything in place, so we have to come with something. The other one didn't have anything else to offer. It was just a basic system that didn't give as much options for you to choose for your profile.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's a question I had. These aren't teaser rates that they're giving us. These are their standard rates, right?
Correct.
Because the renewal agreement, or the agreement itself says that when it renews, it's at Rave's then current pricing. So to answer, I guess the subtext, these aren't teaser rates and they're gonna suddenly jack them up once we get, people in there. They're just, it's gonna be whatever the rates are across the board. I'm guessing it's based upon the size.
Population. is
Population.
also specific.
Vice Mayor Banks?
This is maybe going a little too far, but you mentioned one of the features in that they're able to search a user by their ping location.
Not the user. So if you call 911 and you say you're lost in the woods, we can send you a ping, like a text message to your phone. You would have to click on that text message, and then it would give us live view of where you are to help us locate you.
Live view meaning you get the geolocation of it.
Well, we would get that when you contact 911. We're getting your ping location exactly where you are.
But
the live view would help us, like if you're stuck on the side of a mountain.
They can take a
we don't
camera
have
phone.
one, but you can
Right.
show me where you are.
Okay.
So you use landmarks to kind of.
To get to them quicker is basically what it's for.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Captain Borman, much appreciated.
Thanks.
Give me 1 second. My apologies.
So most likely our contribution to the county will increase too then.
For CSB.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the spreadsheet. Can you check and see if CSB increased in FY '22? I think CSB may have increased already. Tell me we'll look at that question.
Yeah.
But we've already received the amount for '22. Okay, so while she's looking at that, I just want to bring up the budget amendment 3. I know it's confusing because we have the FY '22 budget and then the amendment 3 for FY '21. What we added a feature for this budget was so you can see the actuals through April. And so you can see kind of where we're at through 75% of the year. And we talk about kind of what's changed, and also, you know, this may seem like a very little number, and it is. It's because we haven't received the June real estate tax rate. So we try to provide answers where, you know, there's strange anomalies going on with kind of either low revenues or low expenditures and what's happening there. But other than that, this reads exactly like the standard budget overview where you have your explanation of what went up. All this stuff, again, I outlined in that PowerPoint, so you really have the information there. But you can find it here as well. For water and sewer, stormwater, solid waste, there really wasn't any changes. So it's really just for the general fund side. And then the same kind of line item budget, starting with the original 21, the amendment 1, and then the amendment 3. As a reminder, there was an amendment 2, but that was just on the school side. There was nothing amended on the city side. That's why we didn't include that. And you can just see what changed. The budget adjustments are from Amendment 3, change from Amendment 1. And then you can see again, here's the actuals by line item, not just program. So you can track that through April as well. And for every single program. And then again, we highlight in green when a revenue has gone up, or red when a revenue's gone down, and vice versa for expenditures. Green if the expenditure went down, red if the expenditure went up. So you can just go in here and see all the different areas where something has changed. And you see Jay's budget, both revenues and expenditures, are the most the ones that have dramatically changed because of ongoing issues with COVID and just the membership issues and walk-ins and everything else. So we've had dramatic kind of changes in revenue and expenditures. And then CIP is structured the same way, line item for every single revenue and capital program or project for 21, 21A, and 21A3. And you can see the actuals right here on how we're doing for these capital projects. Encumbered amount, just to explain what that is, that all that is that it's in the system to be paid, it just hasn't been finally processed, but it's going to move to that actual. That's why we included encumbered. And then capital overview just summarizes the previous tab, and then here's that fund balances by department that I was showing you or talking about earlier. It just shows by department what are the different programs where we have restricted funds that are part of our restricted fund balance, not the unrestricted that we're free to use, and how much we have in those funds. Of course, the biggest one being NBTA. Down here we summarize the whole thing and then the whole thing without NBTA. That's a giant piece of it. You can see all the different programs that we have by department. So a much simpler Excel file to review than the full FY '22 10. Any questions on the Excel file?
Yes. I got a question.
Yes, Councilman.
Does this account for the 74% reduction in locality from the VRE, the subsidy?
That's going to be, the 22, I believe we received the subsidy amounts for PRTC.
Yeah, they just passed it.
Yeah, so I think we're going to be bringing that back we had to bring it back whenever you vote on the budget. So, but yeah, I think the subsidies have gone down.
By 121,000.
Correct, yeah. We haven't adjusted the budget, so if that's something we want, but we don't have to spend, so we have a budget amount, but it's more because we just found out.
Okay.
Which is good. If the subsidy amount had increased above what we budgeted, then that would be difficult. But we'll probably hold a different public hearing.
I'm working on keeping it down.
Yeah, very good.
Any other questions on this? Then I only had one other slide, if I can just summarize this. Essentially, please review these files. We have them on the page for the web page for this meeting, this Excel file, and the presentation. And I believe I uploaded the police presentation from tonight as well. So please take a look at all these things. Let us know if you have any questions. We can discuss further at the next meeting. You can act on it next meeting, but we're going to have to meet on the 22nd now anyway, so we have a couple of weeks to go over this. Any other questions?
Questions or comments? Okay, no?
That's all I have for that.
Does that conclude the budget amendment 3 presentation?
Yes.
Do you have a manager's report?
I do. So one item to talk about tonight, and this is also another item that no decision has to be made tonight unless there's just overwhelming, yeah, let's go a certain route. The VRE staff members will be available next week if there's any further questions that I can't answer, but I wanted to at least start engaging with you all on this issue and see if there's a consensus now to just move forward. This is called the VRE Garage Green Wall project. I'll tell you what that is. So as you all remember, we moved the location of the garage to better support our goals with the downtown. With the change in topography, there's a taller portion of the wall than the original design, and that's going to be on the side. This is Park Center Court. This is Phase 1A, right? The plaza, the parking lot for the new city hall, and then the tracks and the station are down here. So it's on the station side. So the only people that can see the longer wall, if you will, are the people who are at the actual station or arriving on the train. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at kind of options for how to address that longer wall. So just continuing the brick, you can see the brick here, right? Continuing that all the way down would cost $300,000 more than the budget, right? Than what we had hoped for the budget. So again, that would be something that, because it's a result of a change in location, that's something that we would have to pay for, right? So they have proposed 3 other options if we don't want to do the brick option, which is just added expenditures. The option they're recommending is what's called the green wall, and I'm going to share this slide with you all afterwards. Some we've been dialoguing with the VRE, but this costs $95,000, and the beauty of this solution is that it's low maintenance going forward. It doesn't really have to be watered except during kind of drought, periods of drought, and it won't require that much watering, whereas other landscaping will require ongoing maintenance, and watering is designed to kind of be self-sustaining and to blend in. So the tracks are actually, this picture doesn't show well, but the tracks are actually higher than that. So it's not going to be full-on visible. Like from the road, you're not going to see it. Most of you were training, you may see kind of the top part of it. But yeah, it's going to be visible. So it's a cheaper option, about $200,000 cheaper than going all brick, and it's a very low maintenance cost option. The other option is just don't do anything, right? Just let it remain a concrete wall. That's $0. It's going to be the cheapest solution up front and ongoing, because there's no maintenance, except for the fact that graffiti. That's the big concern with this wall, and having to deal with that, plus the look of that wall as well. But it is an option if that's the route that we're going to go. But there's concern that it's going to be an ongoing graffiti nuisance that we're going to have to deal with, because we don't want people arriving in our city and seeing a nasty message written right on there. And then the third option is kind of the second best after the brick, if you will, the most expensive, the nicer looking. But this one, the con of this one is that it requires a lot of maintenance costs. And again, just as a reminder, since we own the bottom level, we're participating in the ongoing maintenance of this facility. So we would have an ongoing kind of burden, if you will, share to deal with this landscaping. So this one looks great. If that's kind of our priority, it would be either this one or the brick. The brick, while it's more expensive up front, again, the long-term ongoing maintenance may be less than this, except when you have to make repairs to the brick wall itself. So this is just another kind of aesthetically pleasing option that the VRE that's provided. And again, it's under $30,000 cost, and you'll see kind of pros and cons listed here for both. So the BRE recommends the green wall option, as the only people who are going to see it are the riders and the green. They kind of blend into kind of the grassy field that they have on there. It's low maintenance, and they say it helps deter graffiti for their experience. And so they want to know kind of what our preferred option is before they kind of keep, or, you know, as they keep going on with the design.
Can you define low maintenance?
Yeah, you really don't have to do anything with it after it's installed.
Okay,
Yeah,
nothing.
you don't really have to water it except during drought periods.
Okay.
Repairs, right? So you would have to do, I guess, repairs if someone damages it. Yeah.
So and that's 95,000, what's the downside to the concrete?
It's really the graffiti and the look.
What if the concrete were painted green? So it would literally be a green wall.
You can, yeah, I guess that's something we can tell them. I'm not sure how that would look with the concrete, but you're talking like some kind of stamped concrete, if you will. That's
Stamped,
it.
stamped concrete, to
Yeah.
make it look like either brick or grass.
Yeah, we can ask
How
them.
much
kind
is
of price
that?
I don't know. That's again, we can ask them kind of what that option.
Okay. Are you ready for questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there irrigation going to be placed on all the options? Maybe without the wall, but the other two options, will there be irrigation running through there?
That's something you asked them right down. Are they going to put some kind of water access there?
What it said was for the green wall, for the drought seasons, they have to run water to the facility, so they already have maintenance hose bibs for hosing down parking areas. So I asked them if they could, in their plans, incorporate a hose bib on the outside so that it would be easy enough for VRE staff to simply go out there and water it, and they said it wouldn't be a problem. So they would be able to water it, say July, August, if we haven't had substantial rain and the wall starts looking wilted, maybe go out there and water it.
And the picture with the more foliage, the 130,000 option, what's 130?
Yes.
What's the maintenance fee for that as opposed, well, the one's no maintenance, so what would be the maintenance requirements for that?
I'm not sure they have that.
More
It's just because with the, I guess, the nice landscaping, you have to pay a company to come out there and do the maintenance. Yeah.
Shrubs
We
can
can
die
ask them, kind of come up with an estimate.
And it would be a contractor or a city staff?
No, this would be contract.
Shrubs can die easily.
You know, the trimming, you see trees there as well.
Yeah. I have
Like
2
everybody.
right now in death throes.
Oh, no.
Vice Mayor
Thank you.
Banks.
So, okay, the green wall, and I've Googled green walls, I've seen plenty of images of different types. Is that gonna be that bottom strip, the lower strip, it's gonna be going up continuously, or is it gonna be,
It stops right here.
stops right there?
Yeah. So
Okay,
this is it.
so that's as high as it's gonna go,
Yep, it just covers
the concrete right there? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
How do you prevent it from growing higher? Does it need to be trimmed?
Don't grow.
I don't think so, from my understanding, yeah, it does.
Isn't it just like artificial?
Right, that's something that's gonna go straight up.
If it's artificial,
Well,
it
I'm
wouldn't need
Googling
water.
it, it's not
Well, that's what I'm saying. I
Wouldn't
thought
be
like
green.
it would be like an artificial turf, like
Plastic.
they put on the fields and backyards and stuff like that. That's what a green wall generally wouldn't it be like that type of.
That, I don't know, I can follow up. Yeah,
If it were that, do they need to water?
Well,
Like
says
you
it's
know,
a-
like on
To cut it.
like those putt
Yeah,
areas that
yeah,
those
yeah.
green turf, artificial
Yeah.
turfs, right? That's what I thought would be what the green turf, green wall
It
is.
says it's a trellis system with climbing plants, so the plants are climbing and staying on the trellis, so they wouldn't grow up and not bushes,
Yeah, but.
according to that.
But climbing plants do climb up.
Right.
Right.
Everything.
To your
I've
point,
got
if you've
riding
ever
in my
been to
backyard, it's
Camden,
climb up
I'm
everything.
just, yeah, I just,
you go to Camden Yards, you know, they have the wall and I think it's left field, and that vine grows and grows and grows.
mhm.
Snakes.
Like
Well, I
snakes.
like it, I'm just wondering if we're gonna have to trim it,
Well, they would, yeah.
they would have to.
Correct, so they're, but again, we pay a piece if that's, but from my understanding, again, it's low to like literally no maintenance is what they're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're bearing out this cost too, so they're sharing this cost with us, so it's in their interest as well they want to go with low maintenance option as well. So they're saying this is you kind of put it there and you really, rarely ever have to even think about it.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a question, will that vine, or whatever that is, do any structural damage? Because I know that ivy will do structural damage to a house.
I don't think they would plan something that would damage the garage. But again, maybe we can ask that question.
And then my second point is regarding the bare concrete. And then Preston, you've probably seen this as you go from the next to last stop before you go into DC, on the VRE into DC. Those walls are just covered with all sorts of graffiti, including the brick walls.
That's Crystal City.
Yeah, for life of me, I can't remember that.
That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
And you can't stop it.
No.
Did you say including the brick wall?
Yes.
Yeah.
As you go into DC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no guarantee that people won't be tagging this wall or something up there, right?
No guarantees for anything.
Right, it's gonna happen, you're gonna tag it.
Yeah.
So at least the shrubbery would cover it up.
Yeah.
Well, at the bottom or
Right.
the shorter.
If there's
yard is
graffiti,
what-
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. But there's still the
Do we have
brickwork
a
above
height
the
for people?
green wall.
Harder to get to.
Yeah.
So
you
it
need a
sounds like
ladder.
you guys want to engage with the VRE on this question.
Yeah, because
Yes.
this is a big structure, one of our larger structures, and people are going to see this.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, they've confirmed for the 15th they're coming. So I want to get this on your radar early on.
Sure.
Show you the options, so think about what you want to ask them.
And please ask them to present if we had a pressed concrete wall that looked like brick.
Yeah, see what kind of price that would.
What price that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Any other suggestions or questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, we're just already going to be cutting the grass or sharing the cost of it, right? So I want to probably figure out how much more extra for the 130,000.
Yeah.
So do you like how that one looks? I guess that'd be a good.
Well, I mean, it'll
Start.
deter graffiti, it'll cover any graffiti, and we're already maintaining it. So I mean, I think that would be the best solution.
Does everyone agree that that looks the nicest?
Which
I like
one?
it.
The one with the
top right.
top right, the shrubbery.
I like
Oh,
it.
yeah, I definitely like it. It's my favorite.
But I have a question regarding that, and this is directed to the chief. Would that pose a security risk? Because I'm thinking someone hide behind there.
We're gonna have to shove in some prickly trees.
Or cicadas.
It's fine.
Yeah, they could hide in there, but that's anywhere. I mean, we have a lot of wooded areas throughout the city. Potentially the same thing.
But that seems to be the one that you guys like the most at this point.
I think the shrubs are going to be too much maintenance.
So too.
And they're going to die.
So we'll get the VRE here, but start thinking about what you like from a visual standpoint, and then what your concerns are, just your own internal pros and cons. And when we have VRE here, and we can answer any questions, we can deliberate more.
And they will actually be here to,
Yeah,
or
we'll
on the
join us
screen.
via GoTo meeting.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do not have a closed meeting. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'm afraid
These
that's
chairs
that.
are really nice.
Those, I know, right? They are. I'm afraid that the green
wall's just gonna go way up.